we begin, I just want to remind everyone that this is a safe place. Now, we've all had bad church experiences, and it helps if we talk about it. Jeff and Cindy.
Huh?
Why don't you two get us started?
Oh, no, I don't want to talk about it.
Well, Cindy, why don't you tell us what happened?
Okay, so it was our first time at this church.
Now, before we wrap up, Jeff, Cindy, I know it's your first time, but we like for all of our guests to pray for us before we go. That wouldn't make you feel awkward at all, would it?
Yes.
No, we'd be happy to. Go on, honey. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's pray. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to pray.
That doesn't sound so bad.
It gets worse.
For the homeless, for the people who have homes, for the people who built those homes, and for Sherlock Holmes. Give us bread, Lord, and forgive us our trespasses, because we were probably lost and we didn't realize that we were on private property.
Well, it's not great.
Still not the worst part.
And there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA, amen.
I'm sure they know you meant well.
They asked us not to come back.
I'm Pastor Mike. I'm the family pastor here, and I don't know if you can relate to that experience or not. Actually, I can relate to that experience. My first church experience that I can remember, I was about 12 or 13 years old, and a friend of mine, they built a church right next to his house. He owned a good amount of property, and a church had bought the property next door to him, and they had built a church right there. So for some reason, we thought, hey, we'll go to church. Neither of our parents were going to go, but we decided we want to go as two middle school guys. We were going to go to church on our own. So we both got dressed up. I owned like one suit, so I put it on. I still only own one suit. That was a joke. Some of you will get it in a little bit. But I put on my suit, and we walked over to this church, and we went inside, and, you know, they were sort of like shocked that we came, I guess. They sat us in the back. I don't think they really knew what to do with us, and a lady sort of like helped us through the service. You know, they sang songs out of this book, right? And there were like squiggly lines above the words. I didn't know what those meant. My friend knew what those meant. He said those were like notes, and if it goes lower, you sing lower. If it goes high, you sing higher. That was my only time that I realized I wasn't going to be ever in the choir. So, you know, we did that part, and then this guy got up in a suit, and he preached, and he seemed really angry like the entire time, and he was sweating a lot too. And then at the end of the service, they had this like really long time with music, and everybody was quiet, and people were sort of looking at us like we were going to do something, and we didn't do anything. We weren't moving out of our seat. And then they asked us to fill out this card. They didn't tell us what they were going to do with it, but they were like, fill out the card. I still remember this older gentleman. He had a suit on too. And he was like, I had the card in my hand, and he was like hitting it with his finger, like, fill this out, fill this out. And so I filled out the card. I didn't know any better. You know, I was 12, 13 years old, so I filled out this card. And the next day, it was during summer break vacation, and the next day was Monday, obviously, and I was at home. I was just watching TV, and my parents were at home too, and this car pulls up to our house. And, you know, we weren't really expecting any visitors, and we lived in a neighborhood where everybody sort of knew each other. And I go and look out the window, and I see these two guys get out of the car in suits, and I realized it was two guys from the church that we had went to the day before, right? And I was like, I was on my best behavior, you know? I mean, at school, the principal doesn't make home visits, you know? These guys are coming to my house. And I was freaked out, and I realized they had come to talk to me or talk about me to my parents. So I decided there was only one thing that I could do, and that was I went and hid in my closet. It's a true story. It's a true True story. I promise it's a true story. So I went and I hid in the closet, and these two guys came to the door. My dad answered the door, and they said, "Yeah, hey, does Michael live here?" And my dad said, "Yes, he does." And well, we're here for visitation. Now you got to understand, okay? I was not a church person, okay? Some of you might not be like churchy people, so words like fellowship and visitation. If you're me, if you're 12 years old and you hear the word visitation, that sounds like one of those movies that you're not supposed to watch on sci-fi on like a Friday or a Saturday night, right? Like my head's gonna spit around and I'm gonna spit pea soup and I'm gonna levitate off the bed. Like I don't know what's about to happen. And my dad came back and like, these guys want to talk to you. And I was like, I don't want to talk to them. No. And my dad goes back out and said, hey, he just doesn't feel like talking right now. He's a little nervous. They wouldn't leave. So as I'm hiding in my closet, I hear this argument develop between, this is a true story, between these two guys and my dad. Some words were said that I won't repeat. I think from both parties, by the way. All right? And that was my first church experience. Now I know that we're starting off this new series today called My Bad Church Experience, and that intro video is a little funny, and my story now is a little funny. If you're not a Christian or you don't normally go to church, that's like a really, really bad story. Now I look back on it, and part of me thinks it's funny. Part of me is like, that's really sad. But we're going to have some fun with this series because here's what we want to do. We want to understand what the church is all about. Like, why are we here and why we do what we do? And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. And my first question to you is, have you ever had a bad church experience? Unfortunately, for most of us in the room, we've all had one. Now, usually we don't talk about those in a setting like this. Usually we talk about those when we're sitting around by ourselves with some friends who went to a church like that. You won't believe the church I went to today. Holy cow, or what happened, right? We've all had a bad church experience. I've had a lot of bad church experiences too. A few weeks ago I preached and I talked about some family values, and one of those for us as a family is to create a rhythm. And we want our kids to realize that gathering together with the body is a really big deal. Okay, so when we go on vacation, a lot of times when pastors' families go on vacation and there's a Sunday involved, that's like a day off for them, right? I mean, you don't have to, that's a work day. You don't have to go to church on that day. We normally try to find a church to go to wherever we're out on vacation. And unfortunately, more times than not, we have a bad experience. A few years ago, we were on vacation. And, I went online where we were at and I typed in the zip code and I looked at a few different churches, and then I found, oh, this one looks pretty cool. And, I emailed them, and they actually emailed me back and said, hey, we'd love for you to join us. That'd be awesome. So we're like, cool, we'll go on Sunday morning. And we pulled up to the church, and, I can't just go to church. Okay? I mean, for some of you, whatever profession you worked in, maybe you stepped back into that role, right? Or maybe like if you were a male person, I don't know why that just came to my head, and the mail doesn't come at a certain time, that the system, right? Or if you've been a school teacher, you understand some of those things. Well, as a pastor, I just get things and I recognize things. I can't help it, right? And I was excited when we first pulled up, because we pulled up and they had visitor parking, right? And regular attenders to that church didn't park in visitor parking. Like, it was like, oh, sweet, there's like a spot open. Okay. So we parked in visitor parking, and the facility outside was very nice. It was beautiful. And we're walking towards the door. Okay. And I remember, of me and Ginger and Solomon Hope, and there's this lady standing at the door. I'm like, man, they even got greeters at the door. I was like, this is sweet. And then I saw what she had in her hand. She had this clipboard. And I was like, oh man. I thought that they were going to give us one of those like stickers. You ever seen those? Like, hey, I'm a visitor. I'm a marked target. They put it on you right here. And you walk into church and everybody's got the handshake loaded. Like, it's like, how you doing? Bam! It's coming at you. And we're walking towards the door, so I'm telling the kids, hey, if she hands us a name tag, just go with it. It's going to be okay, We get to the door, and first words out of her mouth, well, you sign this petition. I was like, okay. She goes, will you sign this petition so they could build a mini golf course next door? And I tried. I really tried. I mean, the door was wide open. And for those of you who know me, if the door is open, I usually step in whether I should or shouldn't, right? And I gave her the benefit of the doubt. And I said, hey, listen, we're just visiting from out of town, right? I don't know what you're talking about. You know, I'd love to sign your petition, but I have no clue. Well, you can still sign it. And let's just say like the rest of the service sort of followed that. Another time, we were on vacation, and we went to this church. It was a big church. It was a really big church. And we walked in the front doors, and they had like all these tables in the lobby, right? And they all had these like custom-made tablecloths, and they all had these like really strange Christian words on them, you know, like koinonia singles, you know, or like, you know, like Shadgar something, I don't know. And like, I know what those words mean, right? But some Joe Schmo walks in off the streets like, what is that? You know, like that's strange stuff. And we went in and we sat in the service, and we sort of sat in the middle, and it was like nobody wanted to be there. Like the worship team got up, and the guy who was leading worship was like, hey, thanks for joining us this morning. You know, will you sing with us today? And I was like, okay. We're depressed this morning, you know, and everybody stood, and the worship is going on, and some people, it's like, pull the phone out the pocket, check the time. I was like, man, that was rough. But we've all been there, right? We've all had a bad church experience, okay? I think I've established that. I think we all agree with that. Today, what I want to talk about is I want to talk about this idea of what church is supposed to be. And that's, we're supposed to one another. That's in your bulletin as well. And if you heard me talking this morning, and we do this a lot, is that we don't go to church. We are the church. I love that quote from Carrie Newhoff. Is you and I, we don't go to church. We actually are the church, okay? And yeah, we meet in this building, and yeah, it's set aside for us, but this isn't church. We're church. Okay, I love this picture. This is hard to believe. This is from 2007. Some of you might remember this. This was in Lady Lake. In 2007, the church right there off of 27 was destroyed by a tornado, and they were destroyed by it. The church building was destroyed by a tornado on Friday, and on Sunday they had service, right? And this is a quote from one of the church members. This came from the Orlando Sentinel. It said, it's sad because, you know, you think next Sunday I'm going to go to church, but it's not there anymore. But the building can be replaced. We still have the family of people. And in that statement, you hear that idea of, look, whether the building's there or not, you're still a church, right? This week, I went to SLU 101 with some students in Orlando. A lot of you knew that. And man, the first 4 days, they learned a lot of incredible things. They learned stuff like this frog right here. You know, you ever have, like, you wake up in the morning and maybe you've had your Diet Mountain Dew or you haven't had it yet, and you're thinking through your day, right? And you're like, oh man, I got that one thing I have to do, and you don't want to do it. You know, it's like the really big task. But you know, if you actually do that thing, like the rest of your day would be amazing, right? Well, they did a whole session on a thing called swallow the big green frog first, right? Like, just go ahead and get it done. And the whole idea was, I know this is really gross, but it resonates with high schoolers, is, you know, if you walked into a room and a person came in and they had 3 plates that were covered, and they uncovered all 3 plates, and there was 3 different size frogs. Right? And they're like, hey, we'll give you $1 million if you eat all 3 of these frogs. You know, and you're looking and there's a small frog, and you're like, I can do that. And there's a medium, so that's iffy. And then they have like one of those African bullfrogs, you know, like the size of my head sitting on the last plate. Well, which one are you going to want to do first? Naturally, we want to do that first one, right? But we know by the time we get through that nasty little thing, we're not going to want to eat anymore. So you got to swallow the big green frog first. In fact, they get a syllabus for the week like this. I mean, that's really thick. And they go through all kinds of different leadership training. And that was really cool. But the last half of the week, we worked with a church called The Gathering at Walt Disney World. And Pastor John, who's in charge of that church, just had this amazing vision a few years ago of like, hey, there's 70,000 people who work at Disney. Who's reaching them? And he started calling some different churches. He didn't even live in this area. He lived out of state. And he started calling some different churches in this area. And they're like, yeah, we tried to do something, but it really didn't work. And yeah, you know, we know it's tough for them to come to church on Sunday because of their schedule. Because at Disney, Friday's Monday. Because they're busiest Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So most of your employees, they're going to work on Sunday. So they can't come to church on Sunday or gather at a church, right? And so they decided to start a church. They've planted 3 churches. They have three churches going right now in Disney. 1 meets in a hotel and 2 meet in homes. So they're not like this building, right? They only meet once a month because that's the schedule works out. And what they do is they just go into the parks and they love on employees. You know, Pastor John and I were talking yesterday. Every 3rd Saturday, they do a cookout, a free cookout for cast members at a retreat that Disney has. And we were talking yesterday, and he goes, yeah, you know, it's really sad because guess what the 2 most dreaded times for a cast member are at Disney? Christmas and Night of Joy. You know why? Because we all come. And they expect us to act one way, but then we act like everybody else. He told me another story of a cast member. They go into the park, and sometimes they take little cards that say thank you, and they might give them like a gift card or some candy or something they can put on their pocket while they're working. And they were in the park one day, and he went up to this lady and he said, hey, I just want to thank you for what you're doing. You know, she was just one of those people, like, she does this for like 9 hours. You know, move that way, and the whole herd of people go that way. You know, it's the magic of Disney. And everybody's just sort of like passing her by and nobody says anything. And he walks up to her and says, hey, I just want to thank you for what you're doing. Here's a little gift. And the lady just started bawling. She said she worked 14 years at Disney and never had been thanked. See, that's the primary activity of the church. Is we're supposed to one another. That's what we're supposed to do as the church, as the body of Christ. In fact, in the Old Testament, the word that we use today for church was a word kahal. In English, that's K-A-H-A-L if you want to write it down. And really, in the Old Testament, it was just an assembly of people. That's what the word was. So the word was used when the people assembled with Aaron to make a golden calf. That was the assembly of Israel. The same word was used when the people assembled to hear the 10 Commandments read by Moses. The same word was used when they crossed the Red Sea. The same word was used when they dedicated the temple. It's just simply the word kahal. In fact, I love this definition from Eaton's Bible Dictionary. This is what it says. It says that the character of the word can only be known from connection in which the word is found. Now here's what happened. See, they used this Hebrew word, but there came this time in the Old Testament period where a lot of Israelites, they couldn't read Hebrew anymore. You know, they'd been dispersed so many different places, but a lot of people could read Latin. So these group of scholars, right, Hebrew scholars, put together the Septuagint, which was the Latin version of the Old Testament. Okay, and the Septuagint, they used the word ekklesia. They use the word that we translate in Greek, ekklesia. And guess what? That's the word we use in the New Testament for church. In fact, when Jesus is talking to Peter and the other disciples, right? And he goes, hey, who do you all say that I am? Not what do people say about me, but what do you guys think about me? And Peter makes, his great statement like, you are the Christ, you're the Son of the living God, right? And Jesus makes a statement, upon this rock, right? Not referring to Peter. There's 2 different words used there. Some people confuse that. I will build my church. The word there is ekklesia. It means a gathering of people. It doesn't mean a building. Right? And I mean, in fact, if we really wanted to be more like a first century church, we would gather every day, early in the morning. And we would not consider anything that we have of our own. If Pastor Tim needed a car that day and I had a car and he didn't have a car, dude, not my car. There you go. Right? Hey, take it. Whatever you got to do with it. You know, they did that every single morning. They laid their life on the line every single day to gather together as a group of people. So really quickly, what I want to do is I want to go through 5 things of how we one another. Okay, the first one is this. It comes from Colossians 3:13. It says, "Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you." That's one of the primary things we're supposed to do as the church, as an assembly of people, as a body, is we're supposed to forgive one another, each other. We're supposed to forgive. In fact, it's actually, I like the term bear with one another. That's your first blank there on the bulletin, is bear with one another. That literally, sometimes we're not going to get along. Surprise, surprise, right? But that doesn't mean we just get up and quit. We bear with one another and we forgive one another. Right? We've come so far in 2,000 years in some ways, in other ways we haven't. And nowadays it's like, man, if I don't like something that's happened, I'm out. Right? But 2,000 years ago in the New Testament, you couldn't just say, hey, see you later, I'm going to go somewhere else. There was nowhere else to go. You might have been the only 20 believers in a city of 10 or 20,000. So they had to forgive one another. They had to fight it out sometimes and bear with one another. The second one is this. It comes from Galatians 6:1. It says, "Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted." You know, this is a conversation I have with students all the time. Because a lot of times, listen, I know it. I'm an adult, and I'm a Christian adult. A lot of times we can like this get in our little circle, and sometimes it's really hard to get out of our circle with other Christians, right? Maybe you work in a workplace that you have a lot of non-Christians around you, but a lot of times we just we congregate in these little circles. But a lot of students, they're in their school every single day, and they're like, "Listen, Pastor Mike, I hear you that I'm supposed to be a friend to those who don't know Christ. But how can I be a friend with them when sometimes they do things that I know I shouldn't do?" And this is it right here. Man, if someone's caught in a sin, can you go back for me? If someone's caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. You know, as followers of Christ, we need to help others. But there's also an influencer and an influencee level in that relationship. And when we are in that relationship and we slowly become the one influenced rather than the one providing influence, we need to be careful of where we're at in that relationship. That's what Paul's saying here. Because guess what happened? Guess what happened in the New Testament church, in the first century church? This is crazy. People sinned. Can you believe that? I read that and I was like, wow, that's sort of a shocker, right? Why is it? We come in here and, we've had the argument in the car and we get out of the car and it's like, we put that fake smile on and come in and we get back in the car afterwards and, maybe you nudge your significant other because, the pastor was talking to you today, so you give them the nudge, right? Listen, if someone is caught in sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. We need to restore one another. We all are going to struggle with sin. I was very open and honest with you a few weeks ago. I struggle. My small group comes around me and helps me. I really struggle with frustration and anger. I do. And those guys come around me and they help me with that. And in fact, the students since then have tried to help me with that too. It just makes me more angry. So first we need to bear with one another. And the second one is we need to restore one another. The third one is Galatians 6:2. We need to carry each other's burdens. And in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Now this can mean a lot of different things. Right? This might be the burden of prayer. Maybe you're facing a health situation and you need the help of others, maybe at home or in prayer or visiting you in the hospital. This also can mean financial, or it could just mean just simply helping someone else out. In fact, and this is the statement for it, is we need to carry each other's burdens. And I have a personal story to this. To be honest with you, most of you, I think most of you in your room were maybe here 4 or 5 years ago. I became family pastor here at South Point. So what happened is we took 3 different people's jobs and we made it one person's job. So I do preschool, elementary, middle school, and high school. Okay, that's why I drink so much Diet Mountain Dew. Okay, and we a ton of amazing volunteers every single week. But when we first started, that wasn't the case. Okay, and every week for the first few months, every Sunday I had to work in our preschool. All right, now if you picture yourself a little bit shorter than me, right, and 4 and 5 years old, I am a scary individual, right? I think kids would come in happy with their parents, and I'd be like, hey, welcome to church today. And that looked like the grumpy old troll that came out from under the bridge with Dora, right? I mean, like, oh, Mommy and Daddy, they'd like hide behind her leg and everything. And I was in there every single week, trying my best. I was making the schedule. I was getting the crafts together. I don't know anything about preschool crafts, I was getting the snacks ready. I thought kids could eat Slim Jims, and it just didn't work, I mean, the babies just gnaw on it, right? I mean, that's not a big deal. It's a lot of protein, this one Sunday, we had a great small amount of volunteers in preschool then, and this one lady came to me one Sunday and said, hey, listen, if you need someone to coordinate your preschool ministry, I'll do it for you, right? And, it came from a person, I wasn't surprised. But at the same time, I knew they were heavily involved in another ministry, and it was a really big deal for them to do that. So here's what I want to do, because this past year, they've transitioned a little bit. She's a full-time mom, but she also became a full-time teacher this year, and so we had to transition some. We sat down a few months ago, and she told me, hey, I'm really busy, and I don't know if I can do this role as preschool coordinator anymore. And I know that was really hard for her to tell me that, because she wants to serve, right? And she wants to serve other people. And I was like, hey, I completely understand. And we're at a position now where I was able to take over some of those duties, and I understand that kids can't have Slim Jims anymore, I just feed them Cheetos. So that's not true, not true. And we've sort of transitioned that the last few months. But for 4 years, this lady helped me carry a burden. And I don't mean that in a bad way. With preschool ministry, it's not a burden. In fact, I think they set a foundation. We've baptized a lot of kids in the last 4 years. I tried to count, and I sort of lost track at like 20 plus, okay, because I ran out of fingers and toes. So I know we've baptized a lot, and part of that is the foundation that's laid in preschool. You won't see a preschooler in the baptismal water. You might see an elementary kid or a middle school kid, but you know what? A foundation was laid as we partnered with parents in preschool. In fact, I tell Miss George and Jennifer, I try to remind them whenever I remember that every time they see a child in here, because they serve every single week as preschool small group leaders, right? I've done that job. That scares me, okay? And they're phenomenal at it. I'd put them up against anybody else in the country as a preschool small group leader. But when you see one of those students in there, or one of those kids in there, they had a part of that. And this lady had a part in that too. And I wanted to thank her this morning, because we sort of like transitioned out. And she's still going to work in there once a month, thank goodness, to help out in preschool. But Trish and Pastor Tim, can you come on down here for a second? Right? And listen, I hope you understand when I say that she came to me and said, hey, I want to help you out, because we're a team here at South Point, okay? Come on up. You can come up. I know I did not warn you of this, and I'm going to pay for it later, but I did talk to your husband, so you can take it out on him, all right? I mean, when your wife is heavily involved in your ministry and she comes to you and says, hey, I want to help somebody out in their ministry, that can be tough. But I'm so thankful for this guy that he said, hey, this is going to be okay. And I'm so thankful for you. Thank you so much for just week in, week out. There were a lot of months where she wasn't able to be in here because we were short a preschool volunteer, and she just felt like it was her responsibility to be in there. And Trish, I wanted to thank you so much. Listen, this little token here, in no way can express full gratitude. And I just wanted to say thank you to you for 4 years of just doing all those things that a lot of people in here, they never see. But there's a lot of preschool families and that saw it every single week, and they're so appreciative of it. So thank you so much. See, that's part of carrying one another's burdens, right? I'm going to make it. The last one is this. It comes from Matthew chapter 5, and this is what I want to focus on. No, I'm not there yet. John 13:34-35, it says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know you are my disciples if you love one another." This is a really crazy statement of Jesus, and it so applies to today. And Jesus literally said, if you, the church, the assembly of people, right? And he's talking to 12 disciples then, but now we're worldwide. If you love one another, then the world will know. Well, why doesn't the world know? Because we don't love one another. And we bicker and we fight and we do things that we shouldn't do, and we do stupid stuff. And that's okay because God, He gave the church to us, right? I mean, we're sinful people, and He gave it to us. But we need to fight to love one another and not hold a grudge and a burden. The last one is this, and this comes from Matthew chapter 5, 23 and 24. And this is really, I want to break this down. I'm going to focus here for just a few minutes and we're going to wrap up. This is what Jesus said. He said, "Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in the front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, and then come and offer your gift." This is a really, to us, this isn't a big deal. Okay? But to a first century Jew, this was a really big deal. Okay? And this is the only, and I spent, we spent 3 days, they let them have a little bit of fun at Student Leadership University, so they let them go to SeaWorld, and they let them go to Universal. Okay, at SeaWorld, they do some sessions on dolphins and how we need to work together as a team, because dolphins, when they work together as a team, they can take out a great white shark. And any predator that tries to take out a dolphin knows they have to get one dolphin off by themselves, because they can't take on a whole pack of dolphins, because the dolphins will take them out, right? And then they do a whole session in the shark tank. They don't sit in the shark tank, but if you've ever been to SeaWorld, they have the restaurant, and you can see all the sharks, and they just talk about difficult people, right? And how you deal with hammerheads, and how do you deal with nurse sharks, and how do you deal with bull sharks like me, okay? And that's what the students said I was. I was very thankful for that. I'm dealing with anger, just remember. They talk about that, but they let them have some fun in the parks. And if you've ever been to Universal or SeaWorld or Disney World, you got to stand in line, right? I mean, the lines can be brutal. In fact, part of the ministry we did with the gathering is they just send groups of people into the park to love on cast members. Isn't that nice? You're like, that's tough ministry. Come on. But here's the thing. When you're standing in line for 2 hours, that person that works there has been standing in line for 9. And in fact, it's really crazy. Our group, they went to eat, and it's just recognizing people who are always there. You don't have to just do it at Disney. You can do it today when you go to lunch. Get outside of our selfish selves and say, hey, thank you for what you do. Even if you screwed up my order, thank you for what you do, right? And we had two of our students, these two ladies, they went through this one girl's line. Her name was Danielle. And they went through her line and they just said, hey, thanks, thank you so much for being here today. And then one of our leaders, my wife, went through the line and struck up a conversation with this girl and just said, hey, if you're free, they're having a barbecue tomorrow at the retreat center they have for staff. We'd love for you to come. And she came on Saturday, which was very cool. It's that connection piece, right? How else does she get connected to a church if all she does is work and go home and work and go home? Okay? So here's the thing. Here's how this relates to this. If you've been there, man, and you stood in line for Soren and it was 130 minutes long, you have a little bit of an idea of this. Because there was only one temple in Jerusalem. Right? So picture this, man. You're going there, you're offering your offering, right? Maybe you're offering a dove as like a gift offering or some oil, or maybe you're going in there with a lamb for that forgiveness offering, okay? And you make your way there, which is probably going to take you a couple days if you live outside the city, and you get to the temple. And the temple is this huge complex, and you work your way through all the Gentiles outside, right? And you get in this line, and you just stand there. Now, some people have said, some scholars that know way more than me, and I don't know how they track this, you could stand in line for 8 hours. Holding your offering, dead lamb, right? Or a live one, and you're going to let the priest slaughter it, whatever. You're holding your offering for 8 hours in a line. And you're getting close, and you start thinking, oh, man, daggum. Man, me and, what's his name, got in an argument. And we've not made up yet. And according to Jesus, even if you're like second from the altar and you stood in line for 8 hours, your sacrifice won't mean anything unless you get out of line. I mean, have you been there? Have your child ever had to go to the bathroom when you were at Disney and you were like super close to the front and you're like, oh, I got to get out of line. No, we've been here for so long, right? This is literally what Jesus is saying. You're at the front of the altar. Leave it. This wasn't just like, hey, I'm going to walk in and make a transaction and I'm going to be out. This took time, it took energy, it took dedication, and he says, go and be reconciled to them and then come and offer your gift. And see, I don't think, even with that description, I don't think we understand the power of forgiveness like that. But something happened a week ago in our country that I think really displays the power of forgiveness. So I want you to check out a short video really quick.
I forgive you. You took something very precious away from me. I would never talk to her ever again. I would never be able to hold her again. But I forgive you. And have mercy on your soul. You hurt me. You hurt a lot of people. But God forgive you. And I forgive you.
I forgive you and my family forgive you. But we would like you to take this opportunity to repent. Repent. Confess. Give your life to the one who matters the most, Christ, so that he can change it, can change your ways no matter what happened to you, and you'll be okay. Do that, and you'll be better off than what you are right now.
We welcome you Wednesday night in our Bible study with open arms. You have killed some of the most beautifulest people that I know. Every fiber in my body hurts. And I'll never be the same. Tawanza Sanders is my son, but Tawanza was my hero. Tawanza was my hero. But as we say in Bible study, we enjoyed you, but may God have mercy on you.
Tawanza Sanders begged the gunman as he laid across his mom to shoot him instead of her. That's forgiveness, folks. To sit in a room and be face to face with somebody via video that killed your son and wanted to kill you and say, I forgive you. I know some people this last week called that cheap grace. Well, if that's cheap, then they don't understand God's grace. because it costs. But our bottom line for today, the primary activity of the church was to one another, to bear with one another, to restore one another, carry one another's burdens, love one another, and go and take care of our business before we worship. Forgiveness. You know, as the band comes up and we're going to close out, I want to take a minute, and this is going to be a little different. But something happened a few years ago at a youth event that we did, because I know some of us in the room, we're carrying some of that. We're carrying some of that unforgiveness in us. And we so desperately want to let it go, but at the same time, we want to hold on to it because it sort of defines who we are, right? And a few years ago, we were doing a youth event with some other churches here in the community. And, you know, you do one of those invitations at the end, and you really don't know what's going to happen. And me and this other guy, we had sort of done this fun Q&A, and we're both sort of goofy. And we just like challenge students at the end to do some different things. And we're like, hey, if you need to get a relationship right with someone, you need to do it. And, you know, we were down front, and some students were coming down and praying and doing some different things like this, and we really didn't notice it. But there was a volunteer who was hanging out in the lobby, because, you know, there's always students are going to be students. We're all going to be who we are, and some of them, they want to sneak out, or they want to go hang out. They don't really want to listen. The student came out with phone in hand, and her first reaction was like, really? Seriously? And this is the invitation, right? Or the challenge, or whatever you want to call it. And right when she was about to say something to him, the student, it was a guy, he holds this phone up to his ear, and he goes, hey, Dad, hey, I just wanted to tell you I'm so sorry for the way I acted and what I've been doing. And see, some of us in the room, that's what we need. That's what we need to do. So here's what we're going to do, man. And we live in the beauty. I don't have my phone on me. And we live in the beauty of modern technology when you can send a text, right? Or you can go out in the lobby, or go out to your car, or you could drive there after church. Here's what I want to challenge you to do. And Pastor Tim, I'm going to leave it up to you. If you want to play for a couple minutes or whatever you want to do. I'm just going to challenge you. If you need to get a relationship right with someone, that you do it. Right here in your seat. Maybe you got to pop out that phone and you got to go out and make a phone call or whatever. Nobody's in here is going to judge you for that. Okay? And if they do, just tell them to come see me. I'll set them straight, I promise. All right? But seriously, in the next just minute or couple minutes, take some time. Maybe you got to get your relationship with God right. Maybe that's what you got to do. Maybe all your relationships with everybody else is right, but that one relationship is sort of still bugging you a little bit. Maybe that's what you need to do. Man, grab someone by the hand that you know in this room and just say, man, I want to get my relationship with God right. We're just going to take a couple minutes. If you want to come down here and pray, you can. We're going to leave it totally up to you. Father, I just pray for all of us in this next couple of moments. God, there are some folks in South Carolina this week that rocked the world with forgiveness. And Jesus, I know so many times in my life, I've held on to so much petty stuff. And God, I just pray for all of us in the room right now, Lord. I don't know anybody's situation. You know everybody's situation. Maybe they got to get a relationship right. Father, I pray they do that in the next few minutes. Maybe they go outside. Maybe they just sit there in their seat and they send a text. Maybe it's the person right next to them and they just whisper it in their ear. Maybe it's their relationship with you. God, I pray if it is, Lord, that they'll just in the next few minutes, they'll just say, God, forgive me. Jesus, help us to one another. Help us to be the church you want us to be. We love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen.